The PowerPoint presentation on a poem representative of Gothic literature is going to be something that you use in a PowerPoint, or you can use any slide creator that will still save as a PDF, and that way you can upload it in a document format that I can read in Blackboard. So make sure that you do that. You have several components of the presentation. They will be 10 points each. The first one is the easiest one. It's the title slide with the heading in MLA format. I can demonstrate that quickly. It will look something like this. Make sure your date is in MLA format. Go ahead and put the title of the poem that you have chosen. Do not choose this poem. I'm using it as a sample. Your list of poems you can choose from are here in this list. The next component is going to be a slide with some basic information about the poet. Where did the poet live? For what is the poet well known? So maybe what time period or what kind of poetry does this poet tend to write? An additional interesting fact about the poet, and something about how the poet's culture and lived experience informed the theme of the poem. So it's interesting to think of the writing from a Gothic perspective, and how might that poet's life or some event in the poet's life make that person want to write about something we fear, which is often what Gothic literature is about. So you could take that approach with that part of that slide. I would like a summary of the poem. So you could summarize the events, talk about the plot, that's the order of events, the setting. The setting may take a little more thought, because oftentimes poems are just observational or just a thought someone is having about a situation or a particular thing. 10 points for a slide about the speaker, auditor, and tone of the poem. So who is the speaker? So we don't want to assume the speaker is the poet. The poet is creating a character for the speaker, just like any author who writes in the voice, maybe a first-person narration from a character's perspective. The speaker of the poem should be considered a character. So don't assume the speaker is the poet. And who is the speaker addressing? That is the auditor. And the speaker could just be having an internal monologue. If so, that is the auditor. The speaker and the auditor may be the same character. I guess to some extent, we, the readers, are also the intended or unintended auditors as well. The tone of the poem, since we are looking at these poems from a Gothic perspective, think about the Gothic elements that inform the tone. And to that end, you will look at a couple of Gothic elements in the poem. If you need to find your list of Gothic elements, you can look on Blackboard for that. You have a checklist of Gothic elements here, so you can take a look at that. Let's see, I can show you a slide example. You may have seen already videos on this presentation with a different class that did not require Gothic elements because it was not Gothic literature. This little design thing that you can enact in PowerPoint will give you these options here. So that's kind of nice. Play with that if you feel like it. So I didn't do this, but the designer thing did, which is kind of cool. But I did 3 Gothic elements. You only are required to do 2, so you don't have to go overboard. But I do want you to quote the lines where the Gothic elements are. Also explain how they work as Gothic elements. I also want you to introduce the line with a sentence before you start introducing a quotation. So always start with a main idea sentence. even if you are just talking about something simple in a presentation like this. The next thing I want you to do is to find a symbol or an allusion, or another literary device would be okay. Symbol is pretty easy. Gothic literature is heavily symbolic. So that might be the easiest one to go with. Another slide will be a term used in an interesting way. I want you to define the term, but also quote the line. You're going to use MLA format for everything. Let's see if I have a sample of this. So it could be a word that you know, so it doesn't have to be a word you don't know, just an interesting word. And so you'll see that first I quoted the line and then I gave some definitions. Also, I should italicize Merriam-Webster because Merriam-Webster was the website. It's the publishing company and the website that I used. So dictionaries, websites, those titles go in italics. Notice how I quoted the lines here. So I had worm used here in this line 2, and then I skipped to lines 5 and 8 I wanted to quote as well. So I'm quoting more than 3 lines of poetry, which means I need a blocked quotation format. But I skipped lines 3 and 4, so I need to show that by using, it's like a ton of ellipses. So the general rule is you're going to use dots that are about the same length as a line. So that's what I did, and that's why. Notice that I have lines, the word lines, and then 2, because that's line 2, and then comma for the ones I left out, and then 5 through 8 for these last 4 lines. Block quotations don't have quotation marks around the line numbers or whatever you're quoting. Also, the period stays with the words you're quoting. It does not go after the parenthetical citation. So you already know this, but just something to review. What else do you have to do? Let's see. Term used in an interesting way. Then talk about the poem. How is it relevant to us today still? And then I want you to do all the words of the poem on slides with pictures. Even though you are, if you are in an online class, you might not be presenting this to the class. If you were in a live class, I would have you talk about how the photos you chose or the images you chose relate to each of the sections of the text. And you're using every word from the poem. That means if you want to use several lines on a slide, that's fine. Choose the most impactful image that goes with the lines. You will need at least 8 slides with relevant images, but you can have more than 8. And then you're going to do a bibliography for the poem. And I'm calling that a bibliography because there may be things that you look up, for example, to talk about the poet, that you may not necessarily quote every bit of. I quoted mine. You don't have to necessarily quote every little thing that you learn about your poet. But the bibliography is different from a works cited because the bibliography means that you have used sources that maybe you didn't quote. Works cited means you have quoted. Cited means quoted. So that's the difference there. Sorry about my cat. So I have put on Blackboard for you how to do the bibliography. You can see that when you click in the poetry presentation, you can download this document and look at the ways to do the bibliography. So the sources. So just like works cited sources, you can see how to do all of that and how to quote poetry. Here it is, it's coming, here it is. Okay, sources for works cited. I should have said bibliography, I could change that, but you know what I mean. So the format will be the same, whether it is for a bibliography or a works cited, because it is, you are using MLA format for either thing for this class. Make note of how to quote from the Norton Anthology. Notice that the thing that will change for you is last name, comma, first name of the author, period. Title of the work is the same as here, Norton Introduction to Literature, and the edition. The editor will be the same. The publishing company, the date. The only other thing that changes will be page numbers. So I highlighted or I bolded the things that you need to pay attention to and change. The other parts for the textbook you can copy and paste. Isn't that nice? If you are quoting something from an online poem, you will use this format. So if you have chosen a poem that is not in our textbook, you will use this format. I think I've used Poetry Foundation for any of the poems that I gave you that were not in the textbook. So this format works. Last name, comma, first name of the poet, period. Quotation marks around the title of the poem. Italics for the website. Poetry Foundation is also the publisher or sponsor, and then the link, so that address bar there. Okay. Let me know if you have any questions.